Catholic radio for the Diocese of Toledo. This is Annunciation Radio. WNOC Bowling Green, Toledo. WHRQ Sandusky. WRRO Eden Bryan. WFOT Lexington Mansfield. And WSHB Willard.
Welcome to Annunciation Radio's Faith with Reasons, the program that examines what the church teaches and why. Faith with Reasons.
So glad you could join us for this edition of Faith with Reasons on the first day of May as we come on the air, and really anxious to talk with our guest today, Dale Ahlquist. Yes, you know that familiar name. You hear Chesterton Minutes all the time here on Annunciation Radio. And I'm joined, as always, with my co-host, Mr. Shayne Stanfield. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Ron. How about yourself?
Pretty good.
Quite blessed, thank you.
Got beautiful weather here to usher in the month of May and get rid of the rainiest April on record.
It's warming up.
Yeah. People can start to mow their lawns without puddles,
yes.
At least for a few days.
Just for a few days.
That's right. And I know this will also rebroadcast on Saturday morning at 10, in which case the following information will not be pertinent anymore. But tomorrow, Thursday, May 2nd, is the National Day of Prayer. And it's observed to turn to God, in prayer and meditation. And around here, the 35th Annual Northwest Ohio Prayer Events welcomes two nationally known speakers at a prayer event at the Premier Banquet Hall. That's right there on Heather Downs Boulevard in Toledo. If you've ever gone there in that plaza to get your driver's license renewed or anything like that, It's in that same plaza. The Emmy Award-winning educator and author Ryan Baumberger will be the breakfast speaker. That'll be at 7 a.m. And then in the evening, another event, same place, 6:30 p.m., featuring Toledo native and former lead singer of Sanctus Real, Matt Hammett, will be the guest speaker for that. So again, the National Day of Prayer tomorrow, and a wonderful local commemoration and prayer event at the Premier Banquet Hall. So looking forward to all of that. And of course, First Saturday is coming up, Sorrowful Mother Shrine in Bellevue. There's a Hope and Healing Mass at Our Lady of Consolation in Cary with Mass, and then you can get an individual blessing with the Relic of the True Cross at that event. That all begins at 11 a.m. And then another great event that's taking place on Saturday and Sunday here in the Diocese of Toledo. Everybody invited to venerate a sanctioned Vatican relic of Veronica's Veil. This will be at St. Richard, Swanton, Saturday after the 4 p.m. Mass and Sunday after the 9 a.m. Mass. So a lot of great stuff coming to the diocese.
Wonderful. And those last two events, by the way, if you are hearing us on a replay on Saturday, will be timely. I think the first event, they'll be cutting it close if you have to travel, but should be able to make the second one.
Absolutely. Wonderful opportunity. And how often do you get to not only be there for the True Cross, but also for Veronica's Veil? Mm-hmm. Wow, just amazing. All right, looking forward to a great conversation with Dale Ahlquist, who's joining us. He's the president of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton. He's the creator and host of the EWTN television series, The Apostle of Common Sense, author of 6 books, editor of 16 more books, and publisher of Gilbert Magazine. And he's the co-founder of the first Chesterton Academy, a classical Catholic high school in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which gave birth to the growing Chesterton Schools Network that now includes, get this, almost 70 schools in the United States and 4 other countries. You just can't keep good news down, right? So welcome, Dale Ahlquist. Thank you for making some time to join us and our listeners here in Toledo, the Toledo Diocese, here on Annunciation Radio. How are you?
Hey, thank you. I'm very, very great. It's God bless you both, Ron and Shayne. It's a real pleasure to be with you today.
Pleasure to have you.
We're well familiar with a lot of your work, and I know a lot of us get the emails from you regularly, which is always a wonderful benefit. But these books that you've written are wonderful, and you've got a new one out that's called Localism, Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching. And I think Catholic social teaching is an area that a lot of people are a little confused about. So when I saw that you had this book coming out, I thought, man, we got to get Dale on the show. We got to delve into that. So thank you for the body of work that you've produced thus far for us and your continued work.
Well, you're very kind, and thanks for those kind words. What I get to do is a real pleasure, but I'm always thrilled to be able to do it. That's for sure.
Well, you can tell that you love it.
Well, Chesterton's lovable. That's the thing. Chesterton is a very lovable figure. And He does such good things, and he just draws people to himself because of his goodness and his joy.
Now, when he was walking around, did his contemporaries feel the same way, or has there been increased esteem as time has passed? How was he with those around him at the time?
Well, everybody who knew him loved him. He was known as a man with no enemies. He would debate people in print, and there were some people who only knew him through argue with him in newspapers, and they probably were so put off by his good arguments against him that they sometimes they maintained a certain level of some resentment. But the thing is, even the people he debated, the people he disagreed with, he became friends with. He had public debates with, George Bernard Shaw and H.G. Wells, and these were not people that they agreed with on anything, and yet they maintained a personal respect and friendship. H.G. Wells and Chesterton would spend weekends at each other's houses, even though there was nothing in common in their philosophy. And one of the great tributes is H.G. Wells said to Frances Chesterton, G.K.'s widow, at his funeral, if I have any chance of getting into heaven, it's because I was a friend of G.K. Chesterton.
Oh, wow. What an incredible statement. That's beautiful. Well, he had such a way of putting things and not mincing words and just cutting right to the heart of things in a very approachable way. I'm trying to think of anybody you could compare him to in terms of apologetics or just explaining the faith to people. And certainly there are a lot of good ones out there, but I don't think he has any equal.
Well, that's a good point. People often ask me, well, who do you compare him with? And, I'll turn around and ask, well, who do you compare Thomas Aquinas with?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We get these unique gifts that God sends us, and they come along every once in a while, and they serve their purpose. St. Thomas Aquinas hasn't gone away. We still have him, and we still have G.K. Chesterton, too. So we don't need to compare him with anybody. We have him.
That's true. Mm-hmm. And he's usually good for a smile and a laugh, too.
Amen. Amen, indeed.
So what is the, I guess my first question for you, Dale, is two-pronged here. What inspired you to put this work together? Obviously, you're citing a number of people that have previously written things, including Chesterton. And then my second part of the question is what is Chesterton's tie to speaking about social teaching?
Well, you know what, Shayne, let me answer the second question first.
Mm-hmm.
We know what Chesterton writes about. You talked about him as a great defender of the Catholic faith. Mm-hmm. We also know him for his Father Brown stories and his fiction and his various writings on other topics. But this is one of the things that he wrote about, and it was very important to him. The idea of justice, creating a just society, mm-hmm. Taking care of the rights of the common man, of the family. He was a great defender of the family. He saw that the family was under attack in the modern world. He saw that all the social forces of the modern world were breaking down the basic unit of society, which is the family. Mm-hmm. And so he not only did he write about it, he wrote a lot about it. In fact, he dedicated the last 11 years of his life, he was editor of his own newspaper, GK's Weekly, and the main thrust of that newspaper was what we would now call Catholic social teaching.
Wow.
And he was inspired to do so by reading Rerum Novarum, the encyclical of Pope Leo XIII from 1891. And I would say that this had just a gigantic impact on his life. That, a lot of young men in the late 19th century were, very distressed by the evils they saw around them, brought about by the rise of industrial capitalism and the urban blight and the mistreatment of workers and child labor and all kinds of social problems reeling from the pits that became the urban areas. And their natural reaction was to become socialists. That was just the first natural reaction against big money capitalism. Well, the encyclical of Pope Leo XIII brings out all the very same evils that Chesterton was reacting to. That workers were treated really no better than slaves. They had no rights, and they were not being recognized, and it was causing serious social problems. He cited the breakdown of the family, and he said, the Pope, that the wrong reaction against this industrial capitalism is socialism. So basically, he's condemning both capitalism and socialism, and he says the solution is for more workers to become owners. And that's what really turned on a light bulb in Chesterton's head, and of course his great colleague Hilaire Belloc. The two of them felt the same way about this. And so they wanted to promote a society based on widespread ownership. Small businesses, self-sufficiency, local government, and local commerce. And so that was the idea that appealed to him. So now, your first question, Jim.
Yes.
Why do I care? Well, I've always argued that that G.K. Chesterton is a complete thinker. In fact, it's one of the titles of one of my books on Chesterton, The Complete Thinker. And he writes about everything. And the thing is, he doesn't just write about different things. He puts all the different things that he writes about together. Everything is informed by the same truth, the same cohesive philosophy. And, he says, ultimately, there's only one subject, he says. There's only one subject. And so, our relationship with God, boils down to love God and love your neighbor.
Yes.
And the essence of Catholic social teaching is love your neighbor.
That's beautiful. And as he said, it means justice for the poor, but it also means justice for families and creating an economic system that is based on the family. And he points out that most people today have a slave mentality, but they're unaware of it.
Exactly, yeah. And it's made us into a very passive population. Part of the slave mentality is that we want other people to do things for us, and we only do what we're told, and we don't do anything beyond that. And so we expect everything else to be taken care of. Think about the classic image of the slave. He does his work, but his owner has to feed him, take care of him, and just provide everything else for him so that he works. So he's just exchanging his work for, a livelihood that he can't even control. And some people are happy with that. That's the sad thing. People are happy. I just got my job, and I do my job, and I get paid, and then I eat and go to sleep.
Yeah.
There's not independence there. There's not freedom, and there's not self-government. And so that's the mentality we're trying to replace. That
kind of I guess blissful oblivion, if you will, will keep people just kind of doing their thing.
Right. And as I say, people take less when you don't have freedom, you don't have responsibility. Freedom means responsibility, taking responsibility for your actions. But if your freedom, is taken from you, or if you don't even realize you're not free, you don't act responsibly either.
Well, this couldn't have come at a better time because we spoke briefly before the show, and my impression of Catholic social teaching is how it's been abused in recent times. I mean, I think there's always been an abuse element there, but it seems like it's been even more so hijacked lately and taken and run with by politics, hijacked by politics, a number of things, and I just think that maybe that was an element in your need and seeing what was going on in current times to kind of prop up what proper social teaching is.
Yeah, indeed. The typical things that are brought up with the term Catholic social teaching have nothing to do with Catholic social teaching. They'll bring up certain sexual rights, which aren't rights; they're wrongs.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they'll just emphasize things that they call justice that are just really an elevation of things that are normally considered perverse or wrong or contrary to a ordered civilization. And so that's the first obstacle that we have to get over when it comes to this Catholic social teaching, explaining what it really is and what it absolutely is not.
Mm-hmm. Our guest is Dale Ahlquist, and his book "Localism: Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching," which is a wonderful collection featuring contributions from some of the finest thinkers in Christianity today. And maybe I know we're kind of talking about Catholic social teaching in general. In terms of putting this book together and pulling all the elements together, obviously G.K. Chesterton and several others that are really kind of presenting authentic Catholic social teaching, which obviously we do get lost in sometimes in terminology that's out there. It's easy to get sidetracked. So this kind of cuts through that. So how did this book kind of come about, and what sources did you draw from?
Sure. Well, the first thing we did, I guess just to back up in the narrative here, I mean, Chesterton and Belloc called their idea, their philosophy, their social philosophy, distributism. And that was a word that was really badly chosen.
Yeah, because it conjures up kind of a communist socialist.
It sounds like socialism. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So there, for years we'd say the word distributism, and they go, "Oh yeah, that's socialism." No, it's not socialism, because they're thinking of redistribution.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Robin Hood thing: we take from the rich and we give to the poor, and that's not what distributism is. Belloc was the one who came up with the term. No one liked it. No one liked it when he came up with it. And I don't think he liked it himself, but they kept using it. And they never came up with a better word. And so the problem with distributism is you have to explain what it means, first of all. And if you still have anyone's attention after you explain the reasoning behind the word, the first thing is people will say, well, that's never going to work, And they still have it in their mind. There's only two things. There's capitalism and there's socialism. Well, that's why we came up with what we think is a much better word, which instantly is recognizable of what it means. Localism. The term localism means keeping things close enough so that you can control them. And the two principles of Catholic social teaching, the first one is subsidiarity, a word that a lot of people may have heard, but most people don't have any idea what it means. But subsidiarity means having control of the things that most directly affect you. Having control of the things that most directly affect you. And in other words, it's the opposite of centralization.
Yeah.
And localism is the opposite of centralization, decentralization. So just like you don't want a remote centralized government controlling your life, neither do you want a remote centralized commercial system or big corporation controlling your life.
Yeah.
So commerce should be local, and so should government be local. And that's the thing. They should be accountable to you. You should be most in control and answerable. Chesterton says, keep your politician close enough to be able to kick him.
I love him. I really do.
Yeah.
Well,
and then, the other main idea behind the other main principle of Catholic social teaching is solidarity. So, yes, we control the things that most directly affect us, but then we are in solidarity with our neighbors so that we actually are helping our neighbors out. We stand together with them, first of all, to protect our families, but also for what's in the best interest of the community, the things that, that we have to work together, both in solving problems and in making our local commerce strong and our local government strong. And that's solidarity. And if you think about it, it was solidarity that brought down the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So
A bunch of Polish workers standing together
mm-hmm.
against the Soviet Union. And I mean, against the Polish government, which was a puppet of the Soviet Union. It's really amazing. They were all fervent Catholics. They knew it. They knew what the principle was of Catholic social teaching. They acted it out and changed the world.
Well, it seems so beautifully logic, when you talk about this, because when your focus is on centralized government and you're dealing with remote and large, much like a monopoly type corporations, your focus isn't on your neighbor.
Right.
And
forget about your neighbor.
Yeah, everything is very distant, and it just seems to make sense when it's explained this way.
Yeah, and then of course everybody knows who's running for president. But how many people know who their city council members are?
Yeah.
And how many people know who their local school board members are?
Yeah.
And those people have a much more direct impact on us. And, we should not only keep them accountable, but we should, whenever possible, be those people. We should take an action locally to have, for a more just system around us.
Absolutely. This localism, this subsidiarity is key, really, to us kind of fully living out our own lives in freedom. And with the guide of Catholic social teaching, how can we go wrong, right?
Yeah. It's only sin that's going to screw this up every time. But,
that's right.
but we do have, the great doctrine of the Catholic faith that Chesterton is always defending against the modern world is free will, that we are responsible for our actions, and we can't blame anything on something else. We have to take control of these things, and that's why we stand in line at the confessional, because we are responsible both for our sins, but we're also responsible for the good things we do. We can make decisions that will have a positive effect on those around us.
So what's discussed in this book is the seed of civilization, and Chesterton had a secret in preserving that. So maybe you can explain the seed of civilization and what his secret was to preserve that.
Well, yeah, sure. First of all, I mean, the seed of civilization is the family, okay? Mm-hmm. The family is the first unit of society. It's the basic unit of society. And the problem with capitalism is that it's based on purely individual rights and self-interest, and those rights or those interests can undermine the family, which has a larger, more important interest than the individual. And then on the left, the principal unit for the socialist is the community, and the community rights can undermine the family too. But if you use the family as the basic unit of society, that all the laws, all the social influences should support and protect families, then you won't have runaway individualism or runaway communism or something like that, because the family, the home is sacred, property is sacred, and the property should not be taken away from the family.
So
that's the seed of civilization. Now, just like every family has its order, so then does the larger community have its order. And the whole idea of a rule of law is that the laws are to protect everyone.
So just to clarify, then the runaway capitalism is more individualistic than focus on the family, and then just the opposite. The runaway socialism is is what again?
Well, that's also where the state basically operates over the rights of the family. The state replaces the family. The original term for capitalism was individualism, which is why socialism is called socialism. It was a reaction against individualism. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have forgotten that. But Chesterton's great argument is that both capitalism and socialism end up with the same thing, with most everything controlled by a few individuals, whether it's the government or by the very elite class. And most everyone else then is just working for either the government or for the big giant corporations. Everyone becomes a wage slave rather than an independent owner and a small business.
Well, this could be a real eye-opener to a lot of our listeners, because a lot of people thought that maybe it was a better thing to be more capitalist than socialist. But what you're saying here is that the end game for capitalism is not such a good thing for the family as well.
Yeah, it's monopoly. If everybody's played Monopoly, everybody has.
Yeah.
That's how the game is, with one person owning everything.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's laid out. And so we have to remember that monopoly is not good for the local population.
So then, what is this leads me to the question then, what is the best solution? Because if you got somebody looking at this as a form of economics or a form of politics, you've ruled out the two big players. Somebody that's on this, if you want to assign the right being capitalistic and the left being socialistic, what is the happy medium here to satisfy the family?
Well, now you're getting to the book. Okay, now you've got. But we had to lay the foundation before we could talk about what this book is about.
And we're almost out of time here for the first half hour. We can pick that up on the.
That's something to look forward to in the second half.
Absolutely,
that's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, I will say this for the people who are listening today, rather than the people who are listening on Saturday,
mm-hmm.
is that today is the perfect day to be talking about that, because today is the feast day of St. Joseph the Worker.
The Worker, yes.
And there's our patron for localism right there.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. And we need to take our lessons from him. And some great lessons in this book as well. Again, Dale Ahlquist is our guest. We're going to take a little break here. The book is Localism Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching. It's available now from Sophia Institute Press. It's edited by Dale Ahlquist and Michael Warren Davis, and it's a must-read. It really is. I can't wait to kind of dig into the nitty-gritty of this book coming up after the break here. Thanks for joining us on Faith with Reasons on Annunciation Radio.
Pope Francis said, "The key that opens the door to faith is prayer." Join St. Paul Street Evangelization by running a prayer station in the public square. You don't need to be a professional apologist or theologian. Just listen to the needs of the people you encounter. Offer encouragement, take prayer requests, and pray with people. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Among the many arguments relativists give to prove their worldview, one is that moral beliefs change. For example, they might say, "We used to believe slavery was okay, but now we don't." If there were moral absolutes, well then moral beliefs wouldn't change. How do we respond? Well, we can ask the relativists if we've morally progressed in changing our country's slavery laws. Assuming they say yes, we can point out the fact that progress implies an objective moral standard that our society better conforms to today than it did 150 plus years ago. But if there's an objective moral standard that we've progressed toward, well then morality is not relative. So the relativist either has to give up on the idea that we've progressed morally in order to keep relativism, or reject relativism to keep the idea of moral progress. I'm Carlo Broussard with a ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Annunciation Radio is giving you another way to access all of our great Catholic content. Now catch all of our live local programming on our YouTube and Facebook pages. Go into the studio during Morning Offering with Ron and Dave, Faith with Reasons, or Sing Us to Life with Peter Range. And if you can't view the programming live, our video archives offers everything on demand. Viewing our live local programming takes your faith experience to another level. Annunciation Radio.
Now, back to Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio.
Hey, welcome back here. Shayne Stanfield with Ron Finn, and today we are blessed to have Dale Ahlquist with us as a guest, speaking with his new book, Localism Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching. Dale is the president of the Society of Gilbert Keith Chesterton. He is the creator and host of the EWTN television series, The Apostle of Common Sense. He is also the author of 6 books and the editor of 16 more books, the publisher of Gilbert Magazine, and also the co-founder of the First Chesterton Academy, which is a classical Catholic high school in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This has given birth to a growing number of Chesterton schools that now includes 70 schools throughout the U.S. and 4 other countries, which is pretty impressive. We spent the first half of the program, you may recall, basically just laying the groundwork for the teaching, Catholic social teaching, and what G.K. Chesterton and others had written about during his time, and this has been distorted quite a bit, and we were learning in the first half that it's not necessarily socialism is the answer, and it's certainly not necessarily capitalism as well. So we have to find something as a happy medium, and this is where we find Catholic social teaching. So Dale, I'll let you take it from there.
All right, thanks again, Shayne. And it's just really a pleasure to be with you guys today. Thank you so much for having me on your program. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to do with this book, Localism, is give practical ways people can start taking control of their own lives. So if you say, well, if it's not capitalism, it's not socialism, well, what is it? Well, it's freedom. It's economic freedom because people are taking care of themselves. They're not working for someone else in general, and they are and they're not owned by the government either. So the idea is behind self-government. Self-government means self-control. That is the definition of freedom. Not control yourself, but governing yourself. And with the emphasis on small business rather than huge, big business, people have more freedom, more independence, and it actually makes for a more stable economy. When we read the economic news, we hear wheat stocks are up and wheat stocks are down, and then we're told this is a reflection to how healthy the economy is. But it's much harder for these economists to measure how healthy the economy is if they don't have a stock exchange to look at.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And most if most businesses in the country, as most businesses are small businesses, that's a harder thing to measure. Except you just look around locally, you can see the results. If you have a strong community with people with many small businesses and self-determination, self-control, that has been the ideal for ages. Europe was built on small local villages, small local towns. America was built the same way. Mm-hmm. When people started rushing to the city for one reason or the other, to the urban areas, it always created social problems because people lost control of their own lives is what happened. And so when we talk about localism, we're not saying everybody should be a farmer, but we do need small family farms. We've gone to corporate farming, and that has not, been good for local economies. It's not been good for the family. It's one of the issues of why we have all these poor immigrants coming here, because they know they have the opportunity to work in things like that. But you want your farms run by just a bunch of the equivalent of what used to be slaves, because that's what they are. That's what they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're not being treated fairly, and they're not. They don't have real self-determination. They come here because they're desperate, and they will work for desperate wages, and that doesn't provide for a good, solid, and healthy social situation. But the small farm did. People were in control of their own lives. But I'm saying, no, it's not just small farms. It's also just small crafts. That's why it's great we have Joseph the Worker today, because he was a craftsman, right?
Oh yeah.
He was a craftsman. He took care of his family, and he took care of his craft. And there's supposed to be a dignity connected to labor.
Yes.
And labor is a creative act. God made us in His own image, and one of the things He made us was creators, because He's a creator, and we're supposed to do something constructive with our hands. The Psalm says, "Give success to the work of our hands." Give success to the work of our hands, and we forgot that because we've just become cogs in the wheel. And so one of the practical ways that comes out in this book of how we can change the culture is, try to start spending your dollars locally. Try to support the small business. Try to be the small business. He says, Chesterton, it starts with a tendency against a tendency. Because if we don't make any changes, well, it's going to just keep getting worse. But if we start making some local changes, every societal change starts at the grassroots level. And one of the things that I've personally been involved in that has been just an incredible blessing is starting the Chesterton schools.
Oh yeah.
We know that all these problems of centralization really apply to education most of all, where education has been controlled from a big centralized behemoth.
Mm-hmm.
And parents don't have any control over what's being taught to their children anymore. Local school boards used to, really hold the schools accountable, but now the schools have gotten so big that the school boards have no control of them anymore. And but if you start your own school, you're gonna be able to determine what these children are taught. And all of our Chesterton academies are started by a group of parents who come together. We use the same curriculum, and we're turning out joyful, intelligent, faithful young Catholics who are becoming priests, becoming fathers and mothers, and who are becoming skilled workers as well. And that's how you start making local changes.
And absolutely, obviously, when something like this gets started, obviously it's grown very quickly and very large. 70 schools in the U.S. and still in 4 other countries. I know here in Toledo we have a classical education school that's now at the point, just a couple of years in, where they had to build an addition on to take on the number of students that are interested in it. And I tell you, this common sense teaching that G.K. Chesterton puts forth, it's got to resonate with people, not only with parents, but with students. In this high school that you started in Minneapolis, I would imagine you really saw some transformative effects take place almost right away.
Well, we have, Ron. And speaking of Ohio, we have a Chesterton Academy in Dayton, Ohio, which I'll be speaking at this weekend. And,
wonderful.
And there's one starting next year in Columbus. There's one that started a couple years ago in Akron. And so, there's the Chesterton Academies are coming to Ohio as well. And,
beautiful. And
I can tell you, every school that I visit, I could take those students and bring them to any other Chesterton Academy, and they fit right in because they are absolutely, learning the same material, but they're trained in the same atmosphere, which is just as joyfully Catholic and built on reason. So these kids know how to think, they know how to argue, but they also know how to worship, and they know how to make beautiful art. And it's a really glorious thing that we're part of.
And what a wonderful way to really transform the culture, because you're really kind of getting into to everything that once you strengthen the family and once you put those tools of power in their hands, really the impacts can be felt in all walks, in culture, in literature, in history, politics, you name it.
Amen. We keep saying there are no top-down solutions. There are only these bottom-up solutions. And so localism has to be recognized within the Catholic Church as a movement where people start doing things locally and changing the culture around them.
So this, if I've understood this correctly up until this point, this really doesn't fit in our society today. You really have to force a change locally to be to initiate something like this, and it has to spread significantly because the small businesses are in trouble today.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. It just seems like an uphill battle, and of course, your schools are a great idea of this. When you were discussing the creation of your school, I'm thinking about all of our local public schools are virtually under the thumb, for the most part, of state bureaucracies, not to mention the federal bureaucracy. Their hands are tied because they receive funding from these organizations, and thus their curriculums are controlled, and I think it's probably part of the reason why we have so many crazy things being taught in our public schools today.
You think, Shayne? You think that might be part of it?
Well, I'm just saying.
Think about this. If we can't teach the biggest truth there is, can we teach anything?
Yeah, great
well
point.
stated. Well stated. Now, wait a minute. Did you say that, or did G.K. Chesterton say that?
That one came sort of out of me, but I'm well trained by Chesterton.
So I'm thinking basically I'm myself, because this conversation has helped change some views of my own. But there's going to be somebody out there saying, well, I always thought it was very capitalist of me to go out and start my own small business and make money, make money for my family. So I always thought that was capitalism, and you're saying, well, we don't want to be capitalists. So where's the line being blurred here?
Yeah, so you're right. So we still believe in something called a free market, as Catholics, but we have a responsibility in that free market.
Yes.
And the reason why the term capitalism gets twisted is because it's still necessary to have capital, right?
Yes.
And Chesterton argues that ownership is something that everyone should have. That's the capital they have. They own something, and that's what makes them independent. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, their capital is necessary. So it's not that capital is evil. It's not that money is evil, but it's the love of money that's evil. That's the root of all evil, says St. Paul, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're only pursuing money, well, then we're pursuing the wrong thing.
Right.
And if the job becomes more important than the family, well, then we've lost our perspective, haven't we?
Yep.
So the whole point is you work for your family, and but there has to be dignity and morality in what you're doing. And your job, your work should be giving glory to God. Everything that your hand finds to do, says the Bible, do it for the glory of God. And if we're doing it for that other thing, the other master that Jesus says you can't serve, that other one?
Oh, yeah.
If we're doing it for that, we're doing it for the wrong reason. And, the nature of classical capitalism is that it's based on greed. It's not based on goodness. It's based on greed. And, you have to make more money. Well, that's not the object of working. The object of working is to take care of your needs and to take care of your family and to take care of the church, take care of the poor. Those are the reasons for making money, is to take care of those things. And, what's the purpose of making more money than you can possibly spend in your life?
Exactly.
And that's where we get lost in a hurry.
That seems to be our goal, yeah.
Yeah. And so, the idea, too, is that would be against the localism is against the idea of the big, huge company where you just have many people working for one owner and they become just wage earners. Chesterton and this has been put into practice in communities around the world. There are certain trades that certain businesses that require a lot of workers. And the solution there is that the workers should be the owners. They should have a stake in what they're doing. And there are places where this has been demonstrated to work, and one of them is in Mondragon, Spain, where the entire city and all the companies in the city are owned by the workers in the cities, and they're stable, strong companies. Everyone shares in the profit and shares in the risk together.
So it seems to me we have something like this here when you see a company that advertises itself as employee owned. Is that not the same thing? Okay, it is the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
And it seems to me it would incentivize the employees as well. They have less tendency to be lazy on the job because it's going to hurt their own pocketbook if they're an owner. There's lots of things that this seems to promote.
It is a battle against one of those seven deadly sins, not only greed but also sloth.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So it just makes us more responsible for our actions. And but anytime you hear locally owned or family owned since so and so, that's the sign. Well, that's the company I want to support. That's the trade I want to support because that keeps the dollars local. If you buy from a big chain, your dollars are going out of the community, and that's not localism.
Mm-hmm. And again, the book is Localism, Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching. Dale Ahlquist, our guest here on Faith with Reasons. And as Chesterton says about capitalism, too much capitalism does not mean too many capitalists, but too few capitalists.
Yeah. Yep, there it is right there.
Boy, oh boy, does he hit the nail on the head each and every time.
Yeah, he sure does. Yeah.
So go ahead.
There's some very interesting contributors to this book, including a U.S. senator who wrote a chapter for the book, Senator Marco Rubio.
Oh wow.
And we heard him, we read about a talk that he'd given, and we said to ourselves, well, that sounds like Catholic social teaching that he's talking. And so we
how did this happen?
Because he's a Republican, but he wasn't supporting big giant corporatism at all. He was praising small business, and I said, wow, this is great. And so we contacted him, and he contributed a chapter called Localism in American Politics, and how historically localism has worked and should work again. So that was great getting that from him. And we have Anthony Esselin, who's really one of the great Catholic writers today.
Yeah.
And his chapter is All Freedom is Local. All freedom is local. And the most local thing is the home. That's the first thing we take care of. And Chesterton says, the family is the only kingdom that creates and loves its own citizens. And that's just a marvelous definition of what the family is.
Absolutely.
But then, from that most local thing, the home, you continue to try to keep your interests local. By then, you take care of your neighbor and try to put your support into the local community. And we've had just a wonderful collection of writers, but there's two that I really want to point out, and they're not American. One is in Africa, and one is in Italy, and they have taken Chesterton's principles and put them to practice in their local communities with great success. And their two stories: one, Marco Sermarini, who is my counterpart in Italy. He's the president of the Italian Chesterton Society. He and I are identical twin brothers, even though we were born in different countries at different times. He's just got a great devotion to Chesterton, and he's really has a great essay on how he's put these principles to work in a town called San Benedetto del Tronto on the Adriatic Sea. And then for just a total switch, a guy named John Canu, who is from the West African country of Sierra Leone, when he was a young man, he got a scholarship to go and study in Oxford. And, just a great thing for an young African man to go to Oxford to study. But he went to a Catholic college in Oxford and met a professor named Stratford Caldecott, who was a great devotee of Chesterton. And Stratford Caldecott told him about what we then call distributism, but Chesterton's version of Catholic social teaching. Mm-hmm. And he said, this is what my country needs. This is exactly what it needs. And he went to Oxford with 6 other natives from Sierra Leone, and all the others stayed in the West and got good jobs. He returned to John Canu returned to Sierra Leone and started putting these ideas to work and created an amazingly strong local economy right where he was. So they started manufacturing their own goods, digging their own wells, educating their own students, local farming, local agriculture, and it's blossoming there in Sierra Leone. Just a great story.
So I know everything that we've discussed so far. It seems to me that that localism is very much in harmony on the way that this country was founded, and I can say that because basically the country was founded on small government, and you can only have small limited government if you have local government that takes care of business. You're not relying on this behemoth that has got control over everything, but it's decentralized. And did I hit the nail on the head here? Is that primarily how this is harmonious with the way this country was founded?
Absolutely, and you hit the nail on the head twice with 2 direct hits.
Okay,
he's a handy guy.
Yeah. So not only is the history of our country and why it was a coveted place of freedom, but it only works on the local scale. And if government gets too big, it stops being in the best interest of the people. It certainly stops being in the best interest of the family. Big government will try to replace the family.
Now, you've written here, I see that you've written how technology has eroded localism, and I have to ask, one, how that's happened historically, but 2, when technology is so much of a part of our lives today. I mean, you think of AI and just how technology has literally exploded just in the last 5 years. How much of a threat is this to localism, and is it going to continue to erode, or can we combat this?
Yeah, so the idea behind technology has always been to the technology, the philosophy behind any tool. The tool makes the job more doable, right?
Right.
We need tools to work with. But when we become the tools, as Chesterton, we've lost our human dignity. When we rely on the tool so that we can't work without the tool, when we rely on the machine so that we can't function without the machine, when we rely on the screen so we can't function without the screen, we are no longer free.
Great point.
We are dependent, and we are serving the machine at that point.
Yeah.
And that is a huge challenge today. Try to get the screen out of your kids' hands. You have to be able to send them to Chesterton Academy to make sure that at least for 8 hours a day they won't have any screens in front of them. but I'll tell you, that is the key challenge is, are we really free when we're serving the machine? Are we free when we are letting the machine do everything for us? Chesterton says it's a sign of decadence when we hire professionals to entertain us. It's a sign of decadence when we hire professionals to fight for us. And it's a sign of decadence when we hire professionals to rule us. We've lost our freedom at that point.
Wow.
So true. Wow. And, of course, this book is a wonderful roadmap, again. And, when you talk about, living on the land and and really kind of transforming at the family level. You know, when you talk about cultivating an environmental ethic that's compatible with the faith, you're really talking about viewing things in a different way and incorporating some very basic things that really go back beyond, but how it's in harmony with America's founding principles.
Yeah, and the other thing, it's in harmony with the Catholic Church. You know, one of the great criticisms of Catholics is that we just leave our faith in church on Sunday, right? And this is a way to put our faith into practice and to really live out the Catholic faith in our daily works, in our family life, so that when people look at us, they should see the Catholic Church, and they should want to become Catholic because they see us. And this is one of the ways we can do that, is by putting the faith into practice, by trying to create a just society, by loving our neighbors. That's what we're trying to do.
Wonderful. Yeah, and it's so true. We have to be living witness here. It's not just explaining this, but putting it to action.
Mm-hmm. Say, you guys, I want to invite all of your listeners to come to the Chesterton Conference, which is going to be in Philadelphia in July 25th through 27th. And we'll be just a lot of great speakers there and a great time at the Chesterton Conference. But we will be having a session on this book, and many of the contributors will be present, and they'll be making a presentation, and you can talk more about this subject there. It's going to be a great conference. Go to chesterton.org to learn about our Chesterton Conference.
And where is it going to be held?
Right outside of Philadelphia. It's going to be at Valley Forge.
Oh, okay.
All right, very good to know. So chesterton.org to get some information on that. I would imagine you could also not only get information about the books that Dale has written, but this book, which is one of 16 or 17 that he's edited, Localism Coming Home to Catholic Social Teaching. It's available right now on Kindle and on hardback. Sophia Institute Press is where you can find it. And I'll tell you, Dale, it's been a wonderful opportunity to chat with you again. This hour went by so quickly. And this book is just loaded with all kinds of practical things, and it'll really make people think. So thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with us.
My great pleasure. God bless you.
God bless. Thanks, Dale.
Yeah, Valley Forge.
Yeah.
I want to go.
Yeah, very cool.
That'll be terrific. Dale, have a great day. And next week, we're going to talk Pentecost and some other things. Peter Savilio, Professor Pete.
Yes, Professor Pete.
Yeah, so the Bible teacher at Lourdes University will be joining us on Faith with Reasons. Hopefully, you will join us too.
See you then.